So this again, we did our homework. We prepared yesterday. We had lunch, right? And so one thing which came up was like, we can like really like split hairs over definitions of what masculinity is or femininity is now, right? And you ask one person, you get four responses, right? Because it's so complex. So maybe the question here is that what is the challenge right now with what we're seeing, right? For masculinity specifically, what are the issues? What makes us talk about it now? Is there a particular way we see masculinity? And maybe that's one way of kind of like avoiding defining what masculinity is. No doubt that'll definitely come up, but we go straight into the issues, especially when we label, we preface it with toxic masculinity, right?
Yeah.
What exactly makes it toxic? What about certain character traits? I mean, off the top of it, maybe this idea of violence, obviously, that obviously could be something which is quite toxic, right? That could be a way of actually wrapping our heads around these very like nebulous terms, right? Which can shift, and basically a definition depends on your own worldview and mindset, or even religious beliefs also, right? So maybe we look at just the problem or the challenge, not problem, maybe challenges, right? That could be helpful. I don't know, just a thought. What do you guys think?
I mean, as you said, we did talk about it yesterday, and I think one of the reasons why we're having this conversation is because masculinity is being seen as something very toxic in normal conversation, be it in social media and all that. Or even when I talk to women in general, it's like they always like to say that men are the problem, and I have a problem when they say that, right? Like, and they even go so
See,
far as
because
to
you're the
say,
problem, you're a guy, what?
yeah, but the thing is, they go even as far as to say things like, if all men are dead, all problems will be solved. All the
You want
problems
to
in this.
try it?
Yeah,
we have major total fertility rate problems then, if all men are dead.
yeah, but clearly to them they don't care about that. Like they say, there'll be things like cloning and all that will take over the function of men. So to them, the ideal world, the ideal situation will be where men don't exist, because to them we are the problem. We are aggressive, we are violent, we are obstinate, we are privileged and all these kind of things. I mean,
but you have to bear in mind that there's also a radical fringe. Okay, like maybe not fringe, because
I won't consider them a fringe.
Yeah,
I would
they're not
consider them
exactly
quite
fringe.
mainstream.
But
Yeah.
you would, I wouldn't necessarily say that represents the majority female view of men necessarily, right? In the global population, it's just that they're the most vocal,
Of course.
and then they're very good at at amplifying their voice.
But the problem here is when we talk about teenagers, impressionable young boys, who are they listening to? They are on social media. They are listening to these voices. Then they're going to start thinking that they are the problem. Are they going to listen to a silent majority who are keeping quiet, who are thinking that, this is too hardline, it's a bit too extreme, that kind of thing? No, these are very impressionable young men at a very vulnerable stage of life. And then they go on social media, they go on be it TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, and they don't have the benefit of hindsight or the benefit of experience that we have gained in 40 years of being alive. To them, they're stuck in a very vulnerable stage of development, and when they keep going online and they keep seeing all these narratives, then it's gonna be like, then they have to start rejecting that narrative, because to them it's like, oh no, if I accept this masculine thing, then I'm going to be one of the bad guys. I'm going to be part of the patriarchy. I'm going to be part of the problem. And I think that's why we are having this conversation.
Yep.
To me, for us, we are in our 40s. To us, no problem. We already know who we are. We have spent 40 years on this planet, right? And we have a very clear idea of who we are, what we are doing.
Speak for yourself. I have no idea who I am, and I'm still trying to find out.
Okay, fine. But at least we have
Come and attend my workshop.
Yes, you should, Iskandar. It was very good. I attended. But what I'm saying is that we have some sort of foundation to draw upon. Like I said, it may not be a firm identity, or, well, at the end of the day, it's good that it's not firm, because that means we're still growing and adapting. But I'm saying that from the perspective of a teenager, someone who's 15, think about it, we went through that stage, and it's sort of confusing already for us back then. Look at them now, it's even worse. The amount of information that's coming in, the amount of opinions, the amount of perspectives that are coming in, telling them you can't do this, you can't do that. If you do this, you're toxic. If you do that, you are a problem, and all these kind of things. And then I think it's a very scary time, in fact, if you ask me, to be a young man right now, because
when is it not scary to be a teenager, guys? Come on, honestly. Yeah.
So as you describe this, Mervyn, no, absolutely, you're right. But I see there are two levels to this issue here. The first is the internal one, like your sense of self. And as a teenager, that's really very difficult to understand what your values, your purpose. Basically, you just rely on your parents to tell you what lah, or the school system, whatever, right? And that's
Or your
been our
friends.
experience, or your friends. And this is why, at age 40, some of us, we're still asking these deep questions. We don't even know how to ask these questions sometimes. So there's this internal conversation, right? Which is one separate huge thing. But coming back to teenagers, one big thing is a sense of belonging. And you talk about social media communities, right? So sometimes people latch on certain traits and they buy into these traits or beliefs, not because they really have critically thought about it, but it could be something as simple as everyone's doing it, everyone believes in it. So I'll just follow the crowd because I want to be connected, I want to be part of this community. They don't really know what it means, but everyone's doing it, so I want to be cool, I want to be in with it. And when I talked about, so it's an interesting thing, when we talked about toxic masculinity, right? What came to mind was this so-called bro culture, right?
Yeah.
Like you commoditize females, you talk about body count, all this, right? Your score, this and that, right? So that's quite toxic, right? But I think what Mervyn actually highlighted is another side to this, where maybe some of the maybe more reflective teenagers are a bit more cautious, or they don't want to be cancelled. They want to say the right politically correct thing, so they don't buy into that. But they go to the other extreme where they don't dare take a stand on anything because they're worried about being cancelled. They want to be the nice person. They want to do the right thing, which is great. But then it's a confusion. So on the one hand, you have these bros are like, yeah, like, I did this, I'm really man, But on the other hand, there are people so cautious, they have no opinion at all, and they're so scared to actually express anything, right? So therein is the challenge when we talk about masculinity, right? Especially for teenagers. What exactly are we looking at? At what level? And sorry to complicate this, but this is a huge topic.
Well, like you said, right? You're the one, you used to ask questions and give the answers, and now you are just asking questions.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. I think I share the concern too, for young men today, right? And especially those who do not have the proper guidance, I mean, they may be guided, but whether it's the right one, whether it's the right influence, I think a lot of young people are guided by social media, right? Even in the area of healthcare, self-diagnosis, if you feel this way, you're depressed. All right. And everybody wears the label, I'm depressed or I'm bipolar, as a badge of honor, right? And basically it's telling people, you better treat me nice because I have this problem, So, and for that reason, I created a series called Raising Sons. So basically I'm speaking to fathers and, just having conversations with them about, when you're raising a son, what are the things that, you need to kind of pay attention to, and how are you going to, convey or impart some of these values and principles or concepts, and guidance to them, right? So I think the fathers need to play a very important role. But I think, unfortunately, fathers did not receive any guidance, you see.
No,
so I think it has to start somewhere, where they can receive the impartation of information, understanding, wisdom, and all that, insights, and then they can in turn pass it on to their children. So when I do the sessions with these fathers, I have a kind of a two-edged sword kind of thing, where let's say I'm talking about emotions and mental health about boys, if you want your son to grow up with healthy mental health, for example, this is what you need to do right now. Okay. But also, it's kind of a two-edged sword, right? That means, how does it apply to you now? All right. Are you doing these things? How are you in these areas? Okay. Because you also deserve to have, healthy mental health and all that. So I think that's where one place we can start, is to empower fathers, equip fathers to be able to raise their sons, all right, in this very confusing environment, so that they get a proper guidance and proper education, not indoctrination.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what I say, right? Like, when my first child was born, when my first daughter was born, and she came out, and I was like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do right now? It's like there's no instruction manual. It's like you go driving, you go through basic theory, you go through advanced theory, you go through education system, Singapore, whatever. That they don't assume you're competent, just like that. They will make sure that you're adequately prepared. You go through the foundations, you understand the theories and all that before you actually go on to do the thing. But when it comes to parenting, there's no such foundation. I was like, there's no instruction manual, there's no one to guide me, there's no one to tell me what to do. I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to figure this out, right? And then so it was a lot of trial and error and a lot more error, unfortunately, I think, over the years.
Why do you say unfortunate? I don't think it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's
how we learn, right?
I would say unfortunate.
You're talking about errors? Why
Yeah,
errors are
errors.
unfortunate?
Yeah,
because
they
there's
are
a lot.
unfortunate.
I think
Because of
that's your toxic masculinity applying to you right there.
No, I'm talking
I-
about passing on of generational trauma to our children
Yeah, I know.
unknowingly, right? And
Yeah.
then we are talking about adverse childhood experiences, which have been documented through longitudinal studies to adversely affect people in terms of their lifespan, their health, not just mental health, but physical health. It can actually shorten their lives when they have more adverse experiences. So what I'm saying is unfortunate is that I did not know all these things when I was a parent. And then I have impacted my children in such adverse ways that I deeply regret. You know, I mean, of course, they're still alive right now, and
Yeah.
I do believe that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger in a certain way. But I'm sure there are better ways, and I do know through psychological studies and all that there are much better ways compared to what I did previously. So that's what I meant by
No, that's fair. That's fair.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as I guess the only non-parent here, I'm a parent to two cats, so that counts. My two fur kids, but probably not in this context. But no, I see. I mean, I see where Mermaid's coming from. Absolutely, where raising a kid is so important. I mean, especially now, right? Because now there's so many opportunities, and you're not just raising and keeping a human being alive. You have to develop them to reach their full potential. Whereas historically, if you keep them alive, you're happy already, right? but now, so there's so many missteps you can make, and so you're so worried about, and there's no manual, right? But to Iskandar's point that we can't have the perfect plan, right?
Yeah,
And
you
maybe
can't.
I think I see this element of toxic masculinity there because like we share like maybe the condition of being a man is that you must always know what you're doing, right? But we can't possibly know exactly like how to be the best parent. In a way, someone described it as parenting is kind of like building the plane as you fly it. But
Yeah.
this is the beauty of it, because then your intention and your awareness is important. You may make a mistake, but you must have the awareness to correct this. You may not correct it right away, but at some point you must realize, that something's not going right, especially in your relationship, I guess, with your kid. And then you reflect and see what kind of correction you can take. But I suppose in order for that to happen, you must have this awareness, is where Parkson comes in to actually help young parents know what to look out for. Because as we kind of started, I think for a lot of us, we really have no idea how to think about these things. It was never part of our own culture necessarily, or our own well-being, how to reflect about what's important, mental wellness, sense of self-purpose, right? And so I think collectively, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves to have to answer right away.
Absolutely.
But I think it's important that we are aware of what the moving parts, and we always self-correct. It's not like, you go, going back to Mervin's point about taking a driver's license, right? Once you pass the test, you're competent. No one bothers you unless you fail the medical or you get disqualified. But with parenting, I assume you always have to kind of not upgrade, but be very aware of what's happening, all right? It's just because you passed one course, you got them alive to age 5, doesn't mean you're a perfect dad. And there's so much more I would imagine. And I also speak from my own experience with my late father. He was from a different generation. I mean, he was quite old when he had me. He was 44. So you can see, he grew up in a very different generation. So very typical Chinese guy, never talk about emotions, none of that. Provided for his family. And this is the thing. To his mind, I think he was doing the best he could. He was providing for the family, but in terms of emotional growth, Mervin talked about adverse childhood events. There was a lot of emotional trauma because I think, like most men of his generation, didn't really know how to explore emotions and talk about it. So he wasn't so good in that aspect. But to his mind, I think he was really trying his best. And I think many people born in the 1930s and early 40s really thought that, just by providing food on the table, they were fantastic. They were doing a lot more than maybe their fathers did, right? But which is why I think this conversation, as convoluted and going many directions as it is very important, because it helps us reflect and establish what our own intentions are and whatever we want to do moving forward and be a better man. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
read a
honestly,
quote
you
from,
can't.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, I mean, I think the thing that all parents, I know we are straying away a bit from the concept of masculinity,
Yeah.
but I think all parents have to accept that you can never give your children the perfect childhood. You are going to make errors along the way. And the other thing that I want to emphasize here is that I don't think teenage life is ever easy. I understand Mervin's point about wanting to give the young men, like, they need to have a proper guidepost because they're at an especially vulnerable age in their lives, which I agree, and I agree that they need more positive role models. For me, I believe this starts at home. But again, I also understand that there are a lot of fathers, but not a lot of them do the fulfill that necessary parenting role. So that one is quite difficult by itself. Yeah, which is, I guess, where I think, Parkson, you probably have the same thing in mind, which is why you started the courses and the classes to help these fathers to figure out what can work for their kids, their teenage kids in particular. And I also agree that it's important to create positive frameworks for teenage boys to follow so that they can hopefully come up with their own sense of what it means to be masculine.
Mm.
But the core thing I'm trying to say is that some friction cannot be avoided.